Okay, so let's just get right into it, right? You've been doing tons of talks, even at the retreat recently that we had in Dallas, talking about just basically if you are not staying ahead, you're going to be left behind, right? The industry is really changing. So tell me, just talk to some coaches and let us know where the industry is heading for online fitness coaching.
Yeah, when you look at the last 5 years alone, when you talk about the different segments, you could segment it out. You can talk about online fitness coaching, which may be more like building workout programs. You've got online nutrition coaching, which have kind of blended together now. A lot of the fitness coaches are adding macro services and things like that. When you look at the different markets, 33% year over year for the next 5 years in fitness coaching, 12 to 15% nutrition coaching. But then when you look at the holistic market and the radical growth in what we call functional medicine, which for a long time people thought was not necessarily has anything to do with coaching. You had like prep coaching, you've got nutrition counseling, and then you've got like holistic medicine. And we used to always think that those were independent, different numbers. Well, if you look at all the things that functional medicine now can get involved in that involve nutrition, that's like a $350 billion industry. And if you look at the fitness market, even though it's growing quickly, when you look at fitness and nutrition, you're looking at about an $89 billion. These are global numbers industry. Okay. And that sounds like a large number. In the United States, that number's, somewhere around 24 to 18. And so the challenge is, and what we see happening is that America, 1 in 4 people from studies that came out from the pandemic saw that 1 in 4 people don't know they have a condition. Okay. So 1 in 4 of your clients have a condition that you don't know about, that you're using caloric restriction and high volume anaerobic training to try to solve the problem. And that's why you're getting lackluster results. That's why things are getting more and more complex, and why people are probably getting unsatisfied results. And so, but you look at the radical growth of functional, we'll call it functional medicine, which is looking at holistic approaches of healing, looking at all the systems together rather than systems medicine, where maybe you'd go to endocrinologist for just your thyroid, or you would just go to a GI specialist for just your GI. Functional medicine looks at the whole body and looks how all the different systems work together to create functions. So if you have a dysfunction, you don't have it in just one system. You have multiple systems interacting with one another that aren't interacting correctly or are dysfunctioning together as a system. And we need to look at all of it together as a whole. And that's why the success is so much greater in a functional model rather than in a standard medicine, allopathic Western model, right? Well, the opportunity for a health coach or a fitness coach or a dietitian, whatever, we're going to put all coaching that has to do with health in the same category for a minute, is you already can take a functional approach because you're adding the nutrition. Hopefully you're working on stress and mindset. Hopefully you're working on movement or fitness of some capacity. So that's already a fitness mind or a functional mind. If they're equipped with a bunch of other tools, all of a sudden they become really good in the area that medicine is terrible. And so when we see the rate of growth, I'm talking about that $350 to $380 billion industry, it's only a few steps of added utility that now make you available to what is that? It's about a 5x bigger market, 7x bigger market. And so that's why I'm talking about functional nutrition. And we coined the term, 10 years ago, it didn't exist. But it's people who use fitness and nutritional approaches of healing, and then they add functional medicine science, dealing with stress management, dealing with hormones, dealing with gut, dealing with all these different issues. Because whether you want to stick your head in the sand or not, you're already dealing with it. And 1 in 4 of your clients don't even know they have it. So you see the problem with that, right? And it's growing.
I mean, think about when you were a coach, I know you still are, but like when you first started your coaching journey, right? And I can even say from my experience, there's so many things that I did with my clients, 5-6 years ago that make me cringe now, because I think the default is, well, we've done all of the things, we've increased movement, we've decreased food. My clients just must not be adherent, right? And coaches are falling back on this versus looking at lab work because they're intimidated by the word functional. I can tell you right now, I have clients that are intimidated by the work that you do or other coaches like yourself because they think that that's too advanced for my clients. But as you're saying, no, your clients are experiencing all that right now. You just don't know how to uncover it, which I know we'll talk about that in this episode.
So yeah. So what happens is a lot of coaches will tell you, I don't think a lot of my clients are dealing with any of this. Okay. And what we found after working with thousands of coaches now between my university, my multiple coaching companies, the number of coaches that have worked in apprenticeships, what we found is what's actually happening is the client doesn't know they have the problem and the coach isn't using the assessments to actually look. So if you don't look for it, you're not going to find it. Right. And so then what it's going to show up as is not getting the results that you want, not being able to produce long lasting, happy client relationships because you only have a couple tools and what they need requires more. And you just keep using fitness tools or standard nutritional tools to try to solve these problems that are now growing at rapid rates across the world. And then what happens is you're going to get left behind because that smaller fitness market isn't going to grow at the rate as the number of coaches are. But the holistic health market and the functional medicine market are going to grow so fast there isn't enough coaches. Right. And so that's why if you're not willing to learn about gut health, learn about hormones, learn about some of these things, you're going to get left behind within the next 5 years for sure. You know, and that's why I'm positioned the way that I am, is because I want to usher really ethical, intelligent, instinctive coaches that know how to deal with these things. And I've committed myself to that future because I believe health coaching can turn the tide on American and global health. I think everyone's going to have a coach at some point. And Taylor, we know that's true. I'm not just making things up based on no history. We know that's true because of nursing. There has already been a market that has done exactly what health coaching is doing now, almost to the letter of growth. And that market is nursing. So little known facts about nursing is that about 1880, close to this, if anybody's a historian, that might be off a few years, but 1880, roughly, you had a very special woman by the name of Florence Nightingale. She was an unlicensed caregiver that created modern coaching or modern nursing. She created she created a method, okay, a method for taking care of people in emergency rooms. She was the first one to bring up the concept of dietetics, little known fact about her there, about nutrition. And she was really big on wound care and patient management, like managing the patient, not trying to create better sciences or technologies, but managing the human aspect of care, which is what coaches do. Okay. And 1880, the first school she creates right around that time. The first school shows up in the United States in 1920. Then 1920, that was just a school that was for certifications. There was no license. There was no permission. She did not wait for anyone to tell her it was okay to do it. She just did it like a badass. Okay. And from that, 80 schools were made in the next 20 years, which you see all these coaching schools popping up like mine and others right now. Okay. In that time frame, nurses were home care. They focused on cash pay services. They were entrepreneurs and they were unlicensed. Who does that sound like, Taylor?
I mean, I see where you're going with this.
This is a coach.
Yeah,
this
exactly
is a coach.
what we're doing. Yeah, like that's
exactly. So then here's the part that matters. Here's what everyone should care about. Then 1940 comes along. 1940, you get a licensure for nursing. Okay. The licensure meant adoption. So now nurses started going into hospitals. And then once every part of the market was exposed to a nurse, all areas, when you look at, I love going back to the book, The Diffusion of Innovation. It's an incredible book about how technologies diffuse. And it doesn't matter what technology, it could be NASA, it could be, healthcare. It doesn't really matter what technology you're talking about, how it diffuses. From 1940 to then 1960, basically, there was a 1,290% growth in nursing, both in medical offices and in some in entrepreneurship. Now, the entrepreneur nurse really isn't around anymore, but we do have the travel nurse now, right? And they're really big and they're growing popular. 1,290% growth, okay? Well, what just happened a couple days ago? Well, the I forget the Center for, I'm gonna get this off on the name. So the National Board of Health Coaching, okay, has been working with insurance companies and the National Medical Board to get insurance coverage for health coaching, for coaching. And as of in about 8 weeks, it'll be the first time in history where a health coach could bill insurance providers for their services. Now, nobody should do that because it's going to pay crap, and the type of people that brings in is not going to be people you're going to want to work with. We already see that in the medical field. That's why dietitians don't do it. Dietitians are coming over and learning from me. Doctors are coming over and learning from me because they want to learn cash pay services where they can do what they want and they're not beholden to insurance companies and getting really poor payouts. That's not why I'm bringing this up. Why I'm bringing this up is that now you've got the acknowledgement from insurance companies, from national medical, the national medical associations, that health coaching is a legitimate service. That's what I mean when I talked about nursing and licensure, right? What that led to, right, was everybody getting to like exposed to nursing. With insurance coverage coming for coaching, what that's going to lead to is diffusion. It's going to lead to a spread of coaching very rapidly. And so remember what I just said about nursing. It grew 1,290% in about 20 years. Okay. What do you think is going to happen to coaching as adoption occurs? Only 12.5% of people right now know anything about functional medicine or what a health coach is. Right? When adoption occurs, you're going to go from 12.5 to 33% very fast, and then over to about 66% in probably the next 10 years. It could happen faster. Look how fast ChatGPT diffused. It did it in a week. Things are diffusing faster. Coaching is going to be the modern nursing of the future where everyone needs a coach. Everyone's going to need one. So if you're someone who's interested in getting into coaching and getting out of the career that you hate, right, that doesn't drive you, it doesn't wake you up in the morning, now is the effing time. Right now. Anyone could be a coach right now. Right now. That's going to change in the next 3 to 5 years because more boards are going to be formed, more things are going to happen, and it won't be that way. And the market will be more saturated. Remember, I told you 1,290%. And then it grew another 980% from 1960 to 2022. But this is the first year ever in 2022 where nursing actually declined. There were less nurses in the market.
I mean, I've had plenty work with me to get out of the nursing field and start their businesses and do what you're doing.
That's what we part of what we do at our university for the education portion of it, right? But those people need entrepreneurship coaching because nurses and people that have 9-to-5 jobs, what they primarily seek is comfort and stability. They want the career of their dreams, but they're risk adverse. So that's why if you're risk adverse, you can't do it on your own. If you're not someone who likes to gamble or feels that strongly about it, then you need to work with someone like, our university, but more the business side of it too, working with someone like Taylor, because that way you don't have to suffer first mover, because when you're risk adverse, if you don't get it right very quickly, you're going to quit. So you really need someone who's already done it to show you what not to do so that you can get out of the career that you hate so much. And we see the statistics on people who hate their job is epic. It's at all-time highs, right? And that's why we're seeing the great resignation, right, in the last 2 years from the pandemic, because people are beginning to realize that there's this virtual world where I don't have to do this thing that I don't want to do to try to live my life. I can actually do something I enjoy doing as part of my life, right?
This trend, right? Like, so obviously, summing that up and making it obvious, you can jump into coaching now. This is the best time to get in, but in order to scale your business and grow, you have to keep up with the trends and know what the heck is going on, because you're going to do more harm than not based on your statistic, right? With 1 in 4 not knowing that they have something. But I want to talk about one specific symptom, because, not only is this beneficial for coaches and their clients, But a lot of my clients, just like these coaches running businesses, we are so susceptible to what is now very popularized, which is this weight loss resistance, adrenal fatigue, whatever you want to, call it. Yeah. And I want to dive into that for a second, because I'm noticing that a lot of these coaches know there's something wrong. They've never done a lab themselves. They don't know where to start. And they just think, I'm a little bloated and the scale's just gone up a little bit. Right. But I want to get your take on, because and I don't know if it's you, but I feel like you have almost just made weight loss resistance, like that name,
thank you.
Right. Yeah. Like, I feel like I've seen you do.
I've been ringing the alarm on this for a decade. And it wasn't only until about 2 years ago that people are like, oh yeah, there's this thing. And if you ask people enough, usually the first place they've heard it is from a secondary version of somewhere down the line where we've been talking about it. Right. We've got a book coming out about it. It's not just something that's what you're going to hear about in the far corners of the universe, like where it's like, oh, I heard about this one person who couldn't lose weight. What's going to happen is it's going to start happening to about 1 in 2 women, we believe, within the next 10 or 20 years. It's happening rapidly. And the reason I know that is I've been in the trenches for 15 years, right? And I see 600 case studies a week. I'm mentoring, I don't know how many coaches, and they all say the same thing. 7 years ago, 10 years ago, clients were a lot easier. Now, 10 years later, they're 10 times harder. I'm not getting the results I used to get, primarily with women, right? And so we coined this thing, weight loss resistance, because in the cellular process of metabolizing fat, something is resisting that flow of process, right? Cellular energy breakdown. There's two, I don't want to get too in depth, but there's 2 main energy pathways inside your mitochondria. There's mTOR pathway, essentially, and you're looking at glycolysis and neoglucogenesis. And then on the other side of cellular metabolism is called AMPK. And that's where most fat is metabolized. And when your body is just normally living life, when I eat food, you're burning fat. Okay. But what happens is major stress over time, chronic dieting, birth controls, toxins in our environment, you name it, they all kind of add up. There's not one bad guy out there. And everyone's going to tell you, be afraid of this one thing. That's not real. Okay. Except for maybe a few different birth controls and a few different medications and stuff like that. But by and large, it's a total accumulation. They call it the total load concept. These triggering events. And they throw off the very delicate feedback loop that happens between your hormones and your mitochondria. Okay. So hormones get disrupted. Mitochondrial efficiency begins to decline. Inflammation begins to build, which resists the normal metabolic process of a body jumping from mTOR, sugar burning state, into fat burning state, AMPK. It's not happening as quick. So like when I eat food, here's what's supposed to happen. I eat food, glucose goes up, insulin goes up, leptin goes up, hunger goes down, which is ghrelin. And as soon as that happens, with leptin going up, fat should start burning while I'm eating. Okay. But what happens in women, and it's just 1%, 2%, 3%, little chips at it, it gets less efficient. The leptin doesn't respond right when the glucose gets released. Then you also have less muscle because you're not putting the way you diet, the way that you stress, eats your muscle away over time. And women have less androgens, so they don't put the muscle back on. So they're hollowing themselves out every time they diet or when they just don't eat and stress out or whatever.
I can tell you right now, the scariest thing that I've ever gone through with my body was quite literally gaining 45 pounds in about 90 to 120 days.
Yeah.
And that was doing all of the right things, listening to my coach, tracking my macros to a T. It was wild. Yeah. And that's when I knew something was wrong. Right. And so I bring this up because there are coaches listening to this where it may not be 45 pounds. It may be that you just have to get really aggressive every time you diet, but anyone that has a history of high stress or those type A perfectionists out there, right? If you're an entrepreneur, obviously, you probably fall into that category, but how does one assess? Like, I would love for you to give
me. Let's real quick, because a lot of coaches are going to hear this. and they're going to be looking at the fitness literature that says this doesn't exist.
Oh,
and
yeah.
they're going to look at the CICO. They're going to look at a lot of metabolic research. Let me help everyone understand how this could be happening at such a rapid way to women, or rapid amount to women, and it not be reflected in the literature. So understand, if you understand research, you should learn about how they select research participants. Okay, this is extremely important. Taylor, if I was going to tell you about how your metabolism worked, would it be a good idea for me to, when it wasn't working correctly, should I go look at research on really obese diabetics for you? No, right? Should I go look at 19-year-old females and males who are, everything works perfect? No, that's not where you are metabolically. No one is researching this. So what they're doing is they're looking at populations of people that are not exactly where you were at, and they're inferring that more likely what's happening is you're mistracking your macros, you're lying about your intake, and you're not being active enough. And the problem and the trap with that is that that's a Chinese finger trap, where the harder you struggle, the actually worse you make it, right? So by reading the literature that's not focused on the population dealing with what you're dealing with, you're causing harm. This is why everyone needs to be very, very clear that the things that you see as a coach happening, that's called clinical evidence. Do not discount clinical evidence, even if it isn't reflected in the literature, because clinical evidence is where we find theory. Then we test the theory later with randomized control trials, and then we prove the theory that people told you before wasn't real because there was no science. So do not become so black and white and so worried you're going to get something wrong that you're only willing to look at what the literature says today, because you will be outdated and you will be incorrect for many of your people that are dealing with problems that won't be shown in the literature till 30 years later. Your clients don't have time for that, and your business doesn't have time for that. Because I can tell you right now, I don't do great ads. I don't do great marketing. What I did is create an amazing product with amazing outcomes, and I became the largest in the world. That's it. You keep it simple, right? Doesn't mean you can't do great marketing. Don't get me wrong. And we're adding those things now. But if you create great outcomes and you have great utility, you cannot have a business unless you just have the personality of a doorstop or something like that. And that's not, I'm just being honest with people. Like, if you can't communicate, if you can't connect with people, then coaching probably isn't for you. Let me save you the money. And that's just the truth. People are better at different things. That's not a knock on anyone. Everyone else, if you can make connections with people and you like health, you can literally do this now. And so anyways, so coaches though are going to be like, no, this isn't happening because all the influencers I talk to are saying this isn't happening. Well, you're wrong, and you're hurting your results for it right now. And more data is coming out every day to prove. If people go back to what I've said for the last 17 years, the things I was saying 17 years ago, they said I was a liar, a hypocrite, snake oil salesman, and now it's the common thing today. Everyone's talking about gut health. Everyone's talking about all these things that before I said is what's hindering results. So when I tell you about weight loss resistance today, it's real and it's growing rapidly. And if you're a coach, you're not going to be able to avoid it in the next 3 to 5 years, because it's happening to every woman right now in some way or another. Wait, if you don't prepare, just wait. I'll be seeing you again in 3 years.
So let's talk about it. Like the actual practical application for coaches listening.
Yeah.
If they are dealing with a client case study, and trust me, I know there's a million, paths you can go down to solve this. But what are some symptoms coaches need to look for within themselves or their clients that something just isn't balanced? Because kind of like I mentioned to you previously, I never really had symptoms until I did, right? Like until I started gaining weight. And I wish I would have figured something out ahead of time. So I'd love for you to kind of give me some symptoms to walk through so that clients can focus on their roster.
So one of the first things that you can do is, instead of waiting for symptoms, is prevent it from ever happening. Okay. And so the first thing how you do that is you do post-care diet services. Do not let people rebound rapidly, because that's how it starts. So more and more literature is coming out every day about something called hormone insensitivity or hormone resistance. So if you gain 3 to 4 pounds of unabated fat and you don't bring muscle with it, that fat grows too quickly. Leptin does not have a chance to rise with that fat gain. So leptin's the fat burning hormone. So if I gain fat too quickly without a balanced ratio of muscle to fat, which is what happens in a rebound, I immediately cause an imbalance in my firing sequence of hormones. And now I'm still even more hungry. I don't have the leptin to balance out against my fat. And so now I've slowed the optimization of my metabolism probably somewhere around 2 or 3% every time you do that. Every time you do that. So the most important diet is the refeed. Okay. Period for women, hands down. I don't care what amazing job you did getting them down to wherever they want to be. If they rebound from that, you've ruined almost all the results that come from that. Right. And that's the problem. And people don't recognize that. They're like, oh, I got the result, deuces. No, not a nutrition dynamic. You're stuck by contract to stay another month at least. I don't have it any other way.
Yeah, and that's so smart. That is so smart to do. And I hope that every coach like listens to this and they're going to say, how do I actually make that happen? But I mean, seriously, when you mentioned
you put it in the contract that they're not allowed, they've got to give you a 30-day notice to leave the program. And if they don't, they're still obligated to pay that 30 days or they've already prepaid it because you need 30 days to at least feed them back up a little bit so their body can acclimate back to a normal diet, normal life in society. Okay. You need at least 30 days to get people acclimated, at least 2 weeks. Now, really young, healthy males, no. A lot of times they can get away with whatever. Unfortunately, there's big reasons for that. But even males are getting it more than ever now, too, because they're chronically under eating, trying to stay under an image of a certain look or beauty that is just unrealistic, 365, and that's what women are doing, so that's part of the challenge. If you try to stay in one place with your body 365, you're going to mess it up. Your body's meant to be in a dynamic state of gaining and losing, getting a little bit more fluff and then leaning out a little bit. That's how hormones stay sensitive. Now, I don't mean big highs and big lows. I'm talking about a natural rise and fall, just like seasons in all the 4 seasons that we have. Your body is supposed to do that. Now, there are certain body types that genetically can look the same all year round, but it's a very small proportion of society. Okay, so that's the prevention part. Don't stay in the same place doing the same thing all the time. That's the worst thing you can do. That is going to cause the problem in and of itself. 2, rapid rebounding is what creates metabolic resistance, parts of it. Okay. There are other components, but the dietary adaptation component that causes some hormone insensitivity and imbalanced firing sequences between hormones is the fat after the rebound. Now that's where you start. Now, if you've got someone that you think is early signs, what are the signs to look for? The very, very first sign for classic weight loss resistance is no pumps in the gym. So that'll be the first thing that happens. So they're not getting the vasodilation and the stimulation, the response stimulus from training. And if you think back, you may not realize this, but I guarantee there was at least a good month or 2 months where you're going in the gym and you're not getting the same response that you used to get. You weren't gaining weight yet, but you weren't getting the same response. You weren't getting the vasodilation. You weren't getting the fullness. You weren't getting something from it. You weren't progressing in your athletic performance, something, right? That's usually where it starts. And so a really good coach, once they realize that they see a stalling happening, they will periodize your programming, right? Which we teach at the university, how to periodize the training, periodize the food, so you can always offset these things so they don't ever become a problem. And you get better results doing it, by the way, because the answer to everything is not effing more. I always use the Tylenol adage, by Kevin Hart. It's like 1 Tylenol was great. Or is that Kevin Hart or is that Cat Williams? I think it was Cat Williams. It was like 1 Tylenol was great. Why not 17? But 17 will be your last headache, right? More isn't more, right? And when coaches don't have other tools, because all the literature is telling them is to put them into caloric deficit and to increase their NEAT and have them do anaerobic training 3 or 4 days a week, then they're just going to do more of that because they have no other tools. And there's a whole world out there. That's 10% of what a coach could be doing. There's a whole world out there if you just expand your mind of so many tools. It's like, holy cow, all this is out here for me, and I didn't know about it. Now, that's what our university is all about. So no vasodilation, no pumps, no response to the training. You'll start seeing sleeplessness and an anxiety build. Okay. And then you'll start seeing water retention. So training will usually make them swollen, but they won't progress in their muscle. Right. And then you'll notice that on their cut, they're cutting slower than they did the last time. Or that they're not cutting at all to some of the normal things that you do. And then if you make a couple of adjustments 2 or 3 times, 4 times, and their body isn't budging, you don't keep going. You got a problem. You need to pull out, reset.
So let's talk about I know this could also lead to many tangents, but let's say a coach is smart enough, they're equipped enough to say, okay, let's at least get like a comprehensive weight loss panel done, or maybe they even know how to do a Dutch test. I don't know. What are some simple lab markers that would show weight loss resistance? Let's start with kind of the adrenal profile and then move into the sex hormones.
So one of the first things, just to kind of make this easier, because they may not remember all of these, Nutrition Dynamic has laid out all the pre-made panels right on our website that coaches can pick from at everyday low prices. That the basic panel that you'd want to look at is called our female fat loss panel. Okay. And when we look at hormones, that's going to look at cortisol, right? So that's the adrenal hormone, right? It's going to look at DHEA, which is a precursor sex hormone made by the adrenal glands, right? It's going to look at your other sex hormones, progesterone. It's going to look at total estrogen and estradiol, right? But it's also then going to look at your thyroid hormones, right? Because remember, I told you the hormones are a big intermediary between how many calories your mitochondria actually chew through. And it also dictates what energy source they use, Taylor. So the law of thermodynamics does not change. Yes, if you an energy system has to stay balanced, right? That's what calories in, calories out kind of means. Okay. That will always be true. But your mitochondria can significantly turn down it's how many calories it burns or energy that it produces, essentially. Significantly turn down how much ATP it produces. And your body can choose what energy resource to use. So many times when people reduce their calories, they'll burn fat, and it's great. But then at some point, your body's going to stop eating muscle or stop eating fat, and it's going to start eating muscle. So it can choose what energy resource it uses, and it can choose how much it produces or how fuel efficient it gets. So the mitochondria can start producing less ATP. The cells can be more efficient with your cellular energy, and you'll still maintain energy balance. So CICO and hormones can both be true. Does that make sense? I hope that helps.
Yep.
So I want to look at all your hormones, right? And I'm not just talking about sex hormones. I want to look at a lot of your different hormones. So then I'm going to look at thyroid, like TSH, free T3, free T4. I'm going to look at a CBC, which looks at your immune system, right? Make sure there's nothing going on there. And white blood, red blood cell counts. The CMP, a cardiometabolic panel, right? It's going to look at liver, it's going to look at kidneys. It's going to look at blood glucose, right? Those kind of things. And then I'd like to see insulin, right? Insulin, if my insulin's high or whatever, I'm going to want to know because that can throw it off, right? And I would like to put in a marker called CRP, C-reactive protein. It's a pro-inflammatory molecule made by your immune system. If there's a lot of buildup of inflammation somewhere for some reason, you may want to look at that. Now, there's a couple more things on there. I don't want to list everything because I think it gets kind of drawn out. We call that on our website, nutritiondynamic.com. It's called the female fat loss panel. Now, if you've done standard blood work and all the other things that I've added and you still don't see anything, then you want to go to the metabolic disease panel that we have on there, the advanced metabolic disease panel, because that starts to get into things that could be shutting off the metabolism, like prolactin, SHBG, ACTH, ANA, That's an advanced conversation that I don't want to have in this call, but that's how you move from one to another. And if I preferably, though, the best touch test that anyone can use is a Dutch test, because it does all the hormones, looks at cortisol throughout the day, looks at B vitamins, it looks at organic acids. I mean, it looks at how you detox your estrogen. It's phenomenal.
And if you're going to start if you're going to be a coach in general, right? Like if it's your very first day, I don't want to overwhelm you, but as you start to build that client roster, understanding that you're going to have clients more often than not, because all of my clients now that have been with me for 3+ years, every single one of them either has weight loss resistance or some parasites or whatever. It's just inevitable. And I wasn't checking for those things years ago. So the first thing I would say is, before you worry about your clients, just use yourself as a test subject, because chances are, if you're unaware of how to even not address these issues, but start or see the symptoms, do a Dutch test yourself, right? And chances are, whoever you get that from, if you're unaware of how to read it, you're going to be able to get a practitioner to help you through that, right? Of course, I know the answer could be investing in a course or a school.
Well, but let's take it a step further. We are here to help the coaching industry. So if you're listening to this, we are not, just because I own a coaching company, we are not in competition. The industry is growing faster than there are coaches on this side of the world. If you want to just be a fitness coach, not happening. I mean, it's flooding, which is fine. But if you're over here, we're not competing. We are here to build every single coach, because I could make $50 million and you could still make $1 million, and it wouldn't even put a dent in the market. That's how fast people are having problems, Taylor, right? So what we're here to do is, you can go to the Nutrition Dynamic website. You can buy a lab, and just for $50 more, buy the interpretation. We will walk you through your own case, or we'll walk you through your client's case and give you the protocol to do. So like, you don't even have to know anything yet to really start at least helping your clients. So they could buy the lab and buy the consult, and then you could run the protocol while you're doing the rest of the coaching. We do that for lots of coaching companies. And then eventually you can come check out Metabolic Mentor University, and we have really, our starter courses, and we have our full certifications, so you get fully certified, but for a lot of people I just think, if you know fitness, you can get started, so starting with, I really, really am a big fan of entrepreneurship coaching companies such as yours. There are a few other good ones that are out there, because just getting your foot in the door, getting your first 10, 20, 30 clients, and then starting to see some of these issues, start practicing some of this stuff on yourself. And then when you're like, okay, this is the route I want to go. I want to work on gut. I want to work on hormones. I want better results from my clients. Then you'd have that natural next step of, getting in-depth, hands-on case study application, because that's what we do at the university. So
I'm going to shift a little bit to just some trending topics that I'm seeing with weight loss resistance. Two things, or one thing in particular that I wanted to address is semaglutide, because it is now at every single med spa and everyone has used it. I mean, I myself have used it. And why I want to talk about how it could be beneficial for you, but also how it's really scary to me how available it is to Gen Pop that have no experience touching it, more than likely. So,
well, first off, right now, they're actually having a hard time getting a hold of it. It's got national shortages. And those that can't afford it are not getting it through insurance, because there isn't inventory, which is sad, because the people that actually need it are medically diseased. They're extremely obese. They've got diabetes, because another one you wanted to talk about, metformin. Metformin stopped working for these people. Metformin's not the miracle drug. Metformin's part of the reason that the problem happened that now semaglutide's trying to solve. Understand that every medication is not an easy button, and it is not the 100% truth. No medication's a miracle drug. There's always a trade. Now, sometimes in the cost-benefit analysis, it makes sense to use a drug, okay? But just using it because you don't want to diet doesn't work that way. It will flake a lot of muscle, just like every weight loss drug that came before it. HCG, phentermine, right? Any of them. Yellow jackets, cocaine, whatever it is you're using as your weight loss drug.
Not cocaine.
Oh, cocaine was a popular weight loss drug.
I know, but I'm just cracking up that you're like cocaine very casually threw that one in there. So
because it's all the same gimmick. It's all the same. Your situation was different, which we could talk about, but there was
stress. Yes, I want to, because there are people listening that, I mean, briefly, semaglutide. I mean, just
right.
you know, yeah, just go ahead and explain it briefly, because people might say, "What is that?" And I mean,
by the way, well, here's another topic. So here's something that's interesting. So everybody said, no, it's bullshit. The gut has nothing to do with you losing weight. Really? Well, interestingly enough, do you know what semaglutide is? It's GLP-1 enzyme. Okay. That's a gut peptide. That's why when they do stool replacement, right, or they do stool transplants on obese individuals, they lose a lot of weight because your gut has a lot to do with your metabolism. And I've been saying that for 15 years, and people said I was crazy. Well, I guess I'm not crazy now, because people are getting stool transplants and they're making peptides that come from the gut for weight loss, right? So trust me when I tell anyone listening to this. I mean, you can ignore me, but everything that I've said today will be fact and be, oh, you didn't know that, common knowledge in a few years. And if you want to wait behind everyone and figure it out later when it's too late, then don't listen, but the semaglutide, GLP-1, how does it work? What does that mean? So when your body eats food, what's supposed to happen is that, again, glucose is supposed to go up. Okay. Insulin is supposed to go up. And then glucagon goes up, and then an antagonist, glucagon's made by alpha cells in the pancreas. And then GLP-1 is also released a little early by the gut. And what that does is it actually reduces glucagon and helps insulin, which helps leptin. Does that make sense a little bit? And leptin's the fat burning hormone. But people mess their diets up. They jack themselves up. They're doing all these crazy dieting things. Remember what I told you? So it messes up the system. So if your glucagon is too high, right? So when you shut down glucagon, you shut down hunger hormone, which is your ghrelin. Okay. So you're not hungry. Right now, there's a lot of side effects that can come with that, not coached correctly. Nausea, you can pass out. It'll dry you out, create constipation. It makes gut issues worse if you're not careful. All kinds of stuff. If you have a nodule on your thyroid and don't know about it, and it's precancerous or cancerous, then it can blow up your thyroid cancer. Okay. So it's not the miracle. It is an amazing tool for people that make way too much glucagon, which is why your weight loss resistance was the way that it was. And that was why it was mutually beneficial in your case and efficacious to use it with the right diet systems. And I cannot express that enough, because if you don't diet with it correctly, you're going to flake a bunch of muscle. You're not going to solve the problem. Your body's going to get adapted to that. Why do you think all these sugar drugs are out? All these new drugs every time. Trulicity, right? I mean, you watch TV, there's 17 blood sugar drugs out there, like, being made every day. Why is that? Well, because everyone was using the easy button called metformin to control their blood sugars. And then guess what happens? Well, alpha cells start releasing more glucagon because you shut off sugar pathways in the liver. The body will adapt. So people were actually starting to gain weight faster and becoming resistant to metformin. And it blew up and got fast. I mean, it was happening everywhere. So they came up with all these drugs to offset the side effect of metformin. Do you see how one problem leads to another? Right? So everything can be a tool. But if you've got no plan for how you're going to feed yourself out, how you're going to maintain your muscle, how you're going to, also semaglutide makes everyone estrogen dominant. So your estrogen is going to go up. I bet they didn't tell you that either. Right? Do you want to be estrogen dominant? Men are going to get emotional. Women, when they come off, the glutes are going to blow up if they don't do it right. So you want, big butt, I guess you can just starve yourself, take a bunch of semaglutide, and then come right off and go right into a bunch of pizza and alcohol. You're not going to like the look, but at least, yeah, you'll have the big butts, which is the popular rave today, I suppose, right? But that's the truth. This is how it happens. Women all the time, they don't diet correctly. Then they go right back into a bunch of calories, and that's why they blow up in the legs and glutes and things like that in ways that they didn't want. Nothing wrong with being bigger, by the way, as long as it has the right shape. But from improper dieting, it's unhealthy.
Well, and that's the big scare with semaglutide that worries me as a coach with seeing it in med spas, right? Is the weight rebound is insane if you're putting it in the hands of people that are not dieting properly or they have no business using it.
And FYI, it doesn't work in 1 in 4 people that don't have glucagon issues or that don't have like any elevated glucagon levels. It doesn't work. And you know how expensive they're charging these people? They're ripping them off. I mean, it's terrible, the cost of semaglutide. You know, why do you think I opened up my own medical clinic? Because there are some people, they're at such a metabolic disadvantage. They're so messed up metabolically, like particularly the obese and diabetics, and people with autoimmune disorders. They're at such a place that it's an incredible tool used the right way, right? A hammer can build a house or put a hole in your head. You know what I mean? It's like, that's where you're at. So, you know, it's how you use the tool. And so we have to be responsible with tools, but nobody in America is responsible. So it's just turning into here, you know, easy money, free money, because it's what sells. And it's sleazy, and it's a slime ball move, and it's done in the name of profit and ignorance. And I don't stand for it.
Talk to me a little bit about Anavar. I bring that up because I still see that pretty popularized with women, specifically competitors, more than likely, that are trying to stay lean in their off season. Would love to know kind of your take on that.
So here we go. So here's another interesting topic. Anavar, its actual prescription pharmaceutical name is called oxandrolone. Oxandrolone is a medication for cachexia, bone thinning, other diseases that are withering diseases and age-related disease, okay, with great clinical efficacy. It is a stand-up drug that is generally safe. That's where we need to start the conversation, because at its core, that's what it is. But then what happens is people abuse it. And then what happens is coaches take young people without even doing some of the right stuff, the fundamentals, building their base of core muscle, and putting them on high-dose Anavar, right? High-dose Anavar, high dose, okay, which for a female would probably be, 15, 20, 25 milligrams. Or just standard Anavar at like a 10 milligram, okay? Left in for 6 months to a year can lead to certain male features. It can lead to the development of PCOS. It can lead to autoimmune disorders, potentially at higher dose. It can have unintended consequences in blood sugars, cholesterol. Okay. However, I would argue that 1 in 4 women, Taylor, the number one problem is that genetically and hormonally, they can't build muscle. So how the hell are you supposed to help someone? And we all have clients like this. I don't care how good of a training program you do, they can't build pounds of muscle. They can get stronger. That's different. But they can't build muscle. Those women, when they use fitness methods to lose weight, they lose muscle in the process that they don't get back, and then they gain more fat. And that's why you see a lot of women that are currently 35 years old that have a body fat of 40% and a non-skeletal muscle mass of 18. They're skinny fat because their hormones are so jacked up, they're not holding their muscle. That's what you need. Androsterone is what builds muscle. Testosterone is not what builds muscle, by the way, just so everybody knows. It does not. It holds muscle. It is not real unless you are a male and you double your dose of testosterone. If you were to do that with women, they would get male features. You cannot do that. So testosterone, you can use, there's a ingredient out there called Primo, which is a bit of a blend of testosterone that seems to work a little bit better for women. But by and large, women don't build muscle with test. They build muscle with androsterone. which is supplemented using oxandrolone. Okay. Now, again, we have about probably 1 in 10 women at Nutrition Dynamic, postmenopausal, other women, that we will use some type of androgen derivative, whether it's a SARM, whether it's a peptide, like 5-amino-1-MQ has got promising research for the future for women to reclaim their metabolism and get their body composition correct. I want you to think of a woman with very, very low muscle and very, very high fat, almost as an old cachexic person where their muscles withered away and they don't have the metabolic capacity to get back over the top of it, okay, to get healthy again. It's the same thing with a woman with no muscle and a disproportionate amount of fat. So it is clinically efficacious at that time. And there's doctors that talk about this, to using androgens, whether it's a SARM, right? Whether it's oxandrolone, whether it's a peptide, a butamorin, 5-amino-1-MQ, samorelin, tesamorelin, ipamorelin, all of those different things to help a woman put the muscle on that it would take to bring her metabolism back. Because as we know, the number one biomarker of health still today is muscle mass. Despite what the longevity research is telling you, because they're missing the point. They're skewing the truth. You need muscle if you want to live a healthy, vital life, period. Right? So Anavar, gift and a curse. It can screw up a lot of women's hormones if they take it too long and too much. But optimizing it in women that are hypoandrogenic could be a key to the future. So we are not, as human beings, ever allowed to judge whether something's good or bad. Everything is a tool used correctly in its right place with the right education and the right application can be of great assistance, which is why the coaching industry needs to level the F up with the right education to tell these people what the medical industry or their neighbor or their best friend isn't telling them. Because the truth is somewhere always in the middle. And that's why Metabolic Mentor University exists. We've got to set the record straight.
So I want to shift gears and kind of wrap up with just 2 quick questions that are a little more business related, because you have built such an amazing empire. I mean, with a mass profit every single year, which is awesome. You've got so many businesses under your umbrella.
Yeah, we got about 6, 7 businesses, and just for people out there, I mean, we're well above, we're in the more than 10 million. We'll put it that way. I think it's not very classy anyways, but yeah, we're
you're talking to a business coach, so we talk money. It's all good. But Vince is killing it, basically, all you need to know. And I know
now I'm not in life. I've reinvested all that. Like, my bank account is okay, but I'm not. I'm wealthy. I am not rich because I'm so passionate about what I do. I put all my money back into the businesses. So, I'm not sitting around like I'm Michael Jordan over here or something like that. Like, that ain't happening, right? Like, I have a nice home, but I don't have a private jet. I'm not doing the crazy stuff. I live a pretty normal life. I still meal prep, go to the gym and work. I just have more money and more ability to help others.
Hey, let me ask you that. How many hours a week do you work? Quick rapid fire.
Right now, probably somewhere around 70.
Okay, stop. So I want you to say, you just told me that you're bringing in at least 10 million, working 70 hours a week. That is so important to hear, because one of the problems I see in the business coaching space is these coaches promoting that they are allegedly making 7 figures or whatever, and they're working 3-hour work days.
That's not real. Not if you want to create real impact. If you want to sell if I'm selling a kazoo on Amazon and I've got a good marketing plan, yeah, maybe. But if you're making companies that change lives or something that adds value to the world, it's a constant retooling process, right? And you've got to care about it. Now, there's passive income streams out there that can make you some additional money, but you've got to have, what they don't tell you about that is you've got 2 ways of doing that. One is you borrow so much more money of other people's money that if one thing goes wrong in the economy, all of that is gone. They don't tell you about that. You borrow some money, you buy something, you take a loan on that money and put it into something else. That's what a lot of those people don't tell you is going on there. So if one thing goes belly up, all of it can go belly up. All right. The thing is that for a business, for most people that are doing that, what they're doing is they've got some income coming in from the primary driver. That is that's their main business, right? And then they've reinvested that, and through other areas, money's coming in that gets them to that number. But they still have that primary business. And if they're not reinvesting into it and they're only spending 2 hours, then that's not going to last. That's not a real thing. I know that. I mean, I've helped hundreds of businesses. It's not real.
Thank you. Okay. So I want to ask for just a piece of advice, and we're going to start with beginner coaches. Then I'm going to talk to you about a higher level, but for coaches that are, or people that are.
I will say this, I don't have to work this much, but I'm trying to change the world. So I choose to work 70 hours because I love what I fucking do. Excuse my language. I hope we can cuss on here. If you're doing something that you don't want to work 40 or 60 hours doing it, then you need to change your career. That's my personal opinion, because I have to live with passion. I can't show up every day selling Krispy Kremes because it's what's giving me my 30, 50K a month. Or a year. I can't do it. I choose to work this because I literally have tied myself to a mission in life that gives me infinite energy and joy. I love working. Now, some weeks I wish I didn't work as much, but there's a couple things I'm doing that are passion projects, like the Hybrid Health Summit, that right now we're at 70 hours. I could easily just choose to work 30 hours, but there's no place in the world where I could work less than that and everything not deteriorate over time.
Right. And I think people are focusing on the wrong things. I'm the same way, right? I work as much as you do as well. And I mean, it's because I'm so excited. I mean, I recently was talking to somebody about how balance, to me, like work-life balance, is kind of BS. It's this societal idea for people that, maybe hate their job, to add something in there that they love. But for me, yeah, I love what I do every day, like you. And so why would I stop doing what I do to bring in something else that is balanced, but it's not what I want to be doing? Right. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So for people, this is how I tell people this. If you want to live a normal life, there's a lot of great and normal people out there that are phenomenal. And those people absolutely should focus on balance because it's great for health. Okay. If you're trying to achieve something great that is extraordinary, okay, you got to take ordinary and then you got to put extra on it. All right. And the challenge with that is, in the early stages of it, there is no balance. It's not real. If anybody tells you it is, they're lying to you. Even though I'm Mr. Health, I'm Mr. Balance, right? And I'm telling you, Mr. Balance is telling you balance isn't real. Now, that being said, this is why we have our success management program, because there are cheat codes to where you can support your body in this process. And that's why you have to learn how to take care of your body. I could not keep working these hours and with the energy and the brain capacity if in the background I don't have all my meal stuff taken care of, my self-care taken care of. I've got everything systematized, right? I've done a lot of self-work, right? Like internal work that prepares me and puts me in a position to keep this kind of pace where I don't burn out. Now, I deload, I take weeks off. I do a lot of different things that make that possible for sustained. So I don't want people to think I'm working 60 hours a week every week, 70 hours. That's not happening. But I'm also someone who's figured out how to do it because I put the work into self-care first. I figured out how to maintain me because I'm the primary driver of my business, not my business is the primary driver of me. So I figured out how to do that. And then that allowed me to be very successful in all these arenas and keep a pace that blows everybody else out of the water. So that's why having a coach at some point is super important. You need to figure out how to make yourself fuel efficient, right? And not lose your health chasing your wealth, because that's a broke man's game.
Right. I mean, I think it was last year was my, my best year in business so far. And I took off more time than I ever had before. Right. So even though I'm working more on a weekly average, things are so systematized at this point that I can walk away and my business right. Money. Right. And that's hard. And so let's talk about beginner coaches, right? The coach who might be listening, or the person listening that is either wanting to start their business, or maybe they're, under the first 5K mark. They're like, man, this is so freaking hard. Like, I'm trying to balance a full-time job and start this business. What is the one piece of advice, business advice, you can give them to just keep going?
So I think the first thing is that business development is personal development. And I really, truly believe that if you're going to make it in, the only reason I made it through the hard times was because it became part of who I am. And I wasn't going to stop being who I was. And so I really just, if you haven't worked on personal development and mindset and either working with a therapist or a coach or reading, there's a lot of great books out there, The Power of Positive Thinking, Think Big, Grow Rich. I mean, God, there's so many books out there. I mean, we could just sit here forever, but, and then my spiritual connection, I'm shout out, like, I don't know how to grow a business without God. So if you're an atheist, I've got more power to you. I don't know how I would do it if I didn't have faith in something greater than myself. That's just me. It makes me powerful in business. So quick shout out there for the faith. But that being said, I had to focus on personal development. I had to systematize my life, take care of my fitness, take care of my family, take care of my health, and take care of my mental health. Because if you don't do that, you're not going to get through the highs and lows, right? That come with building the early stages of your business.
Well, the early stages are hard. I mean, the first 2 years of business are, not that it's not hard as you scale, but the first two are really challenging because, you know, a lot of coaches are telling you, have confidence, keep going. And confidence is built from evidence, right? And a lot of these coaches don't have evidence that the money's coming in yet, especially the first 6 months, trying to get your first 20 clients. Like, it's challenging out there, right? You hear no a lot. You hear no more than you hear yes. And that's just different. You're putting yourself out there in a different way. So,
right. But that's what I'm saying. So having a process where yeses or nos, this or that's going on, doesn't bleed into your belief about yourself. Because this is what happens. If you don't believe in yourself, you're not going to make it. Because whatever you believe is what's going to happen. I'm big in manifesting. I visualize every morning. Whatever you truly believe inside is what will happen in your reality. So with a lot of these coaches, what I get them to really focus on is visualization, right? Process, right? Understanding that the first 2 years, no matter what happens, it's not a reflection of where you're going to be. It's not a reflection of who you are. It's the road to entrepreneurship. Everyone goes through that. This too shall pass. The game in the beginning is not necessarily about blowing everything out of the water. It's about surviving. Literally. Surviving is a win.
Yep.
Because if everyone could do this, they would.
Uh-huh.
So then all you have to tell yourself is, oh, this is how it's supposed to be. So I'm going to keep it patient. I'm going to keep it one day at a time. I'm going to focus on what I can handle today. I'm going to be really great at what I have in front of me. I'm not going to buy into the fear. I'm not going to buy into the I'm not enough. I can't do this. But my friends or my parents, or I'm not going to listen to my close circle of people that don't have the vision that I have, because it wasn't given to them. It was given to me. My instinct is telling me to go forward. So you just follow it and stay patient. And then one day you're going to be outside of that. And boom, a rocket ship uses about 30 to 50% of its fuel just getting out of the atmosphere, getting out of the inertia of gravity. That is entrepreneurship. Life is going to try to hold you back. People are not going to be interested in your services. You're going to be telling yourself all kinds of crazy stuff. That's the road. I went through it. Taylor went through it. Everyone went through it. So stop thinking it's a you problem. That's why personal development is so important, because if you don't understand that, you're going to believe your own bullshit and you're going to quit 5 minutes before the miracle. Right? And that's the truth. Right? So if you don't have any of this emotional intelligence, if you've never been told this or shown this or coached this, you're not going to make it. That's why personal development is business development, because you better be right, because your business, right? And that's, I can't be more clear about that. If I did not have that, I would not be here today, because there were a lot of things that I did that weren't logical, but that were right to my instinct. Like, I just kept moving forward. When life was telling me no, I knew that everyone went through this, and inside something was telling me yes. And so I stayed. Because I stayed, not because I was smart, not because I was talented than more people, not any of those things. It was because I stayed and I was willing to sit in the suck longer than they were. And then I took off. I waited for my moment and it came.
That's sitting in the suck longer than somebody else. It is literally developing that resiliency and that grit. And every stage of your business, every level up, every quantum leap is going to require you to develop it again, right? Like it all builds on itself. The other side of that is, let's say a coach has been doing it for a bit. They're making a good amount. They're in the 6 figures area, and they're looking to scale their business to 7 figures, right? Which from 6 to 7 at that level is a pretty big jump for them. What would you say is your best advice for that?
Yeah, I think this is really great how you're separating beginners from middle. There's a lot of stuff going around on social media, people trying to pass off their advice, their logic. And they're trying to pass it off to mass audience. And that's problematic because it depends what information and who you're talking to, right? So there's information that they could say, oh, all coaches could learn from this. No. Certain coaches at certain levels need to hear different things because they're at different stages. Nothing is universal in many ways. There's a few things about personal development that are universal, but aside from that, different stages need to hear different bits of information. So if we're dealing with them like more of a coach that's gotten past that 2-year suck point, we're in maybe 3 to 5 years. The key that they need to do is they have to build utility in their business. Do not be thinking about every month, I need to beat last month. I need to see a higher dollar amount in my account. No. That's a mistake. All right. Because that doesn't lead to sustaining businesses that make you money long-term. Okay. That's Dogecoin. How do I market to pump the price of my coin and then it's going to dump? And that's what happens to all these coaches out there. They'll get hot for a second and then they're gone because they could not sustain, right, the growth, right? And they couldn't deliver truly on the problems they said they could solve at scale. I can solve 10 people's problems. Can I solve 500 at one time? I bet not. But you want to sell 500 contracts. Oh, okay. That's not how it works. Your eyes just got bigger than your balls. I talk to this about guys all the time, right? Don't do that. That's not, your success is not on the dollar amount that's in your bank account. It is in the impact of the lives that you are working with, right? That's where it comes from. And so if you want to improve that success, that means you build more utility. That's why I talk about adding more systems, adding more education, more services, building out more of a streamlined system to remove friction, right? Then making sure that system can work at scale. Because then when you turn the light on a scale, nothing's going to stop you.
Well, you're taking your one-to-one approach and you're taking it into a one-to-many format, right? Whether it's assistant coaches or whatever, you're bringing on more people to help you and support the vision. I mean, the biggest struggle that I see with coaches that are making 6 figures, trying to scale to 7, is they are too deep into their business on the day-to-day versus working on it. And then simultaneously, they don't have a vision. They just want to make more money, right? Yeah. And as you've already alluded to, I'm just saying it again differently. Your business will make money when you focus on results, when you focus on delivery, when you focus on just getting your clients the best results possible and pumping that information out there. Like you said, I never used ads until I hit 7 figures. Like I was all organic. And it was purely, just what I was putting out there, and really refining your marketing, refining your systems, your structures, getting in really great team members. But I think a lot of people get scared because they get this sense of like wealth for the first time, like 6 figures is like something, right? And they're so afraid to invest in a mentor. Can you make it to 7 figures or higher without investing in some kind of advisor, coach, strategist?
No, I started with mentors in the doing space. So I started with working as apprentices kind of for practitioners. I wanted the technical skills first, right? And then I added the business skills, right? But I was only able to get to 3 million with that. And then when I brought on a business coach, I went from 3 to about 8 to 9. And now this year we should do 12, and I'm just starting ads. Right. So the idea that that's the whole point. Your self-worth and the value of you as a coach or as a person or your impact is not measured by the dollar amount that came in that month. And if you don't have any self-worth coming in, you're going to have a hell of a time dealing with this. This is why the personal development thing is so important. Elon Musk doesn't think about how I'm going to raise the price of Dogecoin or of a Tesla, the stock of Tesla. What he does is he goes, how am I going to send a car to Mars? And the technology that comes from that makes Tesla so useful that more people buy it and the stock price rises. So what a business coach needs to be thinking in terms of that is, how do I make my product more useful? How do I spend time creating vision for where I want to add that utility, what tools I might need for that utility, despite what the monthly numbers look like right today? And when you do that, tomorrow you'll have a 5X or a 7X versus trying to get $100 more right now. It's small money. Small money doesn't make money, right? So it's like, that's why it's like, I'm not thinking about that, because that's not where my self-worth comes from. I want to create amazing results. I want to build something that is very useful, that gets great outcomes, and that will build the business in and of itself, right? And so that's why you're exactly right. And people, when they don't have guidance for that, and all they have is an income statement that shows them how much money they made and no guidance, they have no idea how to evaluate if they're doing well or not, right? The dollar amount you just brought in doesn't really tell you whether you're having high impact or if you're doing well or not. Because when you're investing in your business, your dollar amount's going to be lower, right? And so that's what people don't recognize, and they need to understand, because otherwise you'll be out of the business in 3 years and wonder, why am I burned out? Why am I tired? I thought I loved this so much.
I mean, there are so many coaches that I talk to on a daily basis, not necessarily my clients, just obviously, that are just so afraid to invest, whether they've had bad experiences, whether they think they don't need one, whether they don't get it. And it blows my mind that the norm is thinking that you can do this, just like you said, something extraordinary alone.
Yeah. I didn't have a mentor. I still don't now. And the more money I have, the more of them I have. I've got 3 right now. I've got 3 coaches right now, right? Because coaches will speed up the curve for you by years, because they have because you don't have the experience to know what you don't know. And I grew up in a farm family. So my dad taught me how to work hard. So I know how to work hard, but you know what he didn't do is build an organization. He didn't know how to make the business work for him. He worked for the business. So I thought that if I just worked harder, that I could break the atmosphere and the inertia of my business. And you can't outwork great ideas and planning. You can't. It's not real. It doesn't exist, right? So that's why it's like, I had to get that experience that I did not have, and not waste 3 to 10 years of my life of potentially never getting it right, because I don't know what I don't know, doing it on my own.
Cool. Vince, it's been fun, man.
It's been great. Always love talking to you. You're very inspirational. You're doing such a great job, and you're doing great things for just so many coaches out there. Coaching is the future. You're in the career of the future.
Hey, you too, man. All right. Well, I will link everything, getting in contact with Vince in the show notes. All that will be there if you are looking at any of the labs he mentioned, or just looking at his business or Instagram or whatever. He's got great information that you guys should all check out. So Vince, we'll chat later, man.